shop keys are in my pocket. First thing I'll do is get the left front of the tractor trailer. Clearance lights on top of the trailer. High gain clearance lights on top of the tractor. They're all amber in color. They're not cracked or broken. And they're securely mounted. Take a look at the windshield. It's clean. It's not cracked or broken. There are no illegal stickers. And the rubber gasket around the windshield is intact, not dry rot. Looking at the wipers, the wiper arms are securely mounted. The blades are also securely mounted, not dry rotted, and they have good tension against the windshield. My turn signals, they're not cracked or broken, they're securely mounted, and they're clean and amber in color. The headlights are also clean, they're not cracked, broken, they're securely mounted. Looking up underneath the front of my tractor, there are no puddles that indicate leaks in my engine or in my transmission. Open the hood, I'm going to go to the right side of my house. Starting with the radiator, make sure it's securely mounted. There are no leaks coming from the radiator. It has the sight glass, and looking at the sight glass, I can see I have the proper coolant level. I would inspect all of my hoses on the right side to make sure none are spongy, cuts, no bulges. All the hose clamps are secure, so there would be no leaks coming from my hoses. The bottom radiator hose leads to my water pump. The water pump is securely mounted. There are no cracks, no leaks from that, and it is gear driven. Taking a look at the exhaust system, all of the clamps are secure all the way back to my muffler, making sure there are no holes and there are no signs of soot that would indicate that I may have a leak in my exhaust system. Next, I'll take a look at the fuel tank. It is securely mounted to the frame. All these straps are secure, none are missing, none are broken. The fuel tank and my fuel lines, there are no leaks coming from those. And I would take the cap off, check for a rubber seal, and also look in the tank to make sure it's at the proper level. We'll take a walk around now to the left side of the engine. Starting with the alternator, it's securely mounted to its bracket, bolts not loose. The wires to the alternator are secure, there's no bare wires showing. The alternator is belt driven. Checking the belt, making sure it's not cracked or dry rotted, it's not frayed, and there should be more than 3/4 of an inch play in the belt. Underneath, I have my power steering pump, making sure it's secure to its bracket. There are no cracks, no leaks coming from the pump. It is belt driven also, and I'd inspect that belt like I did the alternator. Coming back, I would check my oil. I'd pull the dipstick out, wipe it off, reinsert it, pull it out, and I would check for proper level. I would also check that the dipstick itself is not leaking. Next, I'll come up to my power steering reservoir, making sure it's securely mounted. There are no leaks coming from it. I would take the cap off and check the dipstick to make sure it's at its proper level. I would inspect all of my hoses on the left side of the engine the same way as I did on the right side. These air hoses lead back to my air compressor, which is mounted securely on the back of the engine. And make sure that there are no leaks coming from it, and it is gear driven. Next, I'll come out to my steering shaft, making sure it's not cracked, bent, or broken. The universal joint is secure, there's no play, and it is greased. The steering gearbox is securely bolted to the frame, no loose or missing bolts, and there are no cracks or leaks coming from the gearbox. My steering linkage, it consists of the pitman arm, the drag link, upper and lower steering arms, and tie rod. I'd make sure none of those parts are cracked, broken, or bent. All castle nuts and cotter pins are present, and the ball joints are properly greased. Now I'll look at the steering axle suspension. I'd inspect the front and rear spring mounts, making sure they're not cracked, broken, not missing any bolts. Then I would look at the leaf springs to make sure they're not cracked, broken, or missing. Looking at the U-bolts, making sure they're not loose, they're not cracked, they're not broken. A shock absorber, it is securely mounted top and bottom, making sure it's not bent, it's not broken, not leaking. Taking a look at the brakes. I'd inspect the air hose to make sure, again, it's not spliced, there are no bulges, it's not chafed, and the fittings are tight and secure, so there would be no leaks. Then I'll take a look at the brake chamber. It is securely mounted, It's not dented, no holes, so there would be no leaks coming from the brake chamber. I'd inspect the push rod and slack adjuster, making sure that they're attached to one another, not bent or broken. With the parking brakes applied, the angle should be at a 90-degree angle. With the parking brakes released, there should be no more than 1 inch of play in the push rod. Then I would inspect the brake shoes to make sure they're not more dangerously thin and they're not cracked or missing. And I would inspect the drum to make sure it's not cracked, there are no holes, and there's no weld repairs. I'll come out to the steering tire, inspecting the inflation condition and depth. The inflation I'd inspect with a tire pressure gauge or a rubber mallet. The condition of the tire is wearing evenly. Both of my tires are the same size and type. There are no recaps on my steering tires, and there are no cuts or bulges on the sidewalls. The depth of my steering tire should be no less than 4/32 of an inch. Inspecting the rim. Looking for cracks. It's not bent, and there are no weld repairs on the rim. I'd inspect the valve stem, making sure that the valve stem does have gaps, there be no leaks, it's secure. I would inspect all of the lug nuts, making sure none are cracked, none are missing, and there are no rust trails or shiny threads that would indicate looseness. Here I have a hub oil seal, making sure that it is all secure, all the nuts are present and tight. There are no cracks, no leaks coming from the seal, and it does have a sight glass where I would check for proper hole level. Driver door, inspecting the mirror brackets, making sure no bolts are missing, it's not loose, bent or broken. Taking a look at the mirrors themselves, they're clean, none are cracked or broken. The driver door, making sure that it opens and closes properly. I would inspect the hinges on the door, making sure that they're not bent, broken, and there are no bolts missing. Also have a rubber seal, looking at that, making sure it's intact and in good condition. Next, I'll take a look at my battery box, making sure that it is bolted securely to the frame, no bolts are missing or loose. I'd also check the battery box cover, making sure it's locked and secure into place. Inspecting my batteries, make sure that they were securely mounted in the box, there are no leaks, and that the cables and the terminals to the batteries have no corrosion. Coming to the back of the tractor, I have red reflectors back here, making sure that they were securely mounted, they're clean, not cracked or broken, and they are red in color. Inspecting my airlines, making sure that the airlines have no cuts, they're not spliced, no holes, they're not pinched or kinked, and the fittings are secure, so there would be no leaks coming from the airlines. My electrical line, I'd make sure that it is plugged in securely to the back of my tractor. The electrical line itself, I'd make sure there are no cuts or bare wires showing on the electrical line, and none of my lines are dragging on the catwalk. Inspecting the catwalk, I'd make sure that it was securely mounted to the frame, and there's no debris on the catwalk, grease, ice, that may cause me to slip. Inspecting the frame and the cross member. There are no weld repairs on the frame, it's not bent, it's not cracked or broken. All the cross member bolts are present and secure. I would inspect the drive shaft, making sure that it's not bent or broken, no debris wrapped around it, and the universal joints at the front and rear are greased and secure. Take a look at the front of the trailer. The header board, there are no holes, cuts, or bulges in the header board. Coming down to my glad hands, I make sure all of my glad hands have their rubber grommets, and the glad hands are secured to one another so there would be no leaks. I would also make sure again that the electrical line is plugged in secure to the front of my trailer. Now I'll go to my fifth wheel assembly. Inspecting the trailer apron, making sure there are no rust holes, no cracks, no weld repairs, and that it is properly greased. Alright, also I would inspect the kingpin to make sure it's not bent or broken. I would also look to make sure there is no gap, daylight between my apron and my fifth wheel. The fifth wheel is properly greased, there are no weld repairs or cracks on the fifth wheel, and the fifth wheel release handle is in the lock position. I would also go around and inspect that the locking jaws were locked secure around the kingpin. The platform, make sure it's not cracked, and again, no broken welds on the platform, and also the mounting bolts, making sure that they're all present and none are loose and they're secure. Next, I'll come to the drive axle suspension. I would inspect the front and rear spring mounts, leaf springs, and U-bolts, the same as I did on the steering axle. Here I have a torsion bar. I'd make sure it's not cracked, it's not broken, and there's no side-to-side play in there. Inspecting the brakes, I have air hose, brake chamber, push rod, slack adjuster, brake shoes, and drum, and I'd inspect those the same as I did on the steering axle. The tires and wheels, I'd inspect the tires, the rim, the lug nuts, and the valve stems, the same as I did on the steering tire. The only difference on these tires would be they should be no less than 2/32 of an inch tread depth. Now, since I have Dayton rim, dual tires, I also have a metal spacer. I'd make sure it's not cracked, it's not rusted through, and there should be no grease stuck between the tires. Back here I have an axle seal. Make sure all the nuts are secure, none are missing, and there are no leaks coming from the axle seal. Next, I would go to the rear of my tractor. I'd inspect the lights at the rear of my tractor. I have tail lights, brake lights, turn signals, and four-way flashers. Making sure they're all securely mounted, they're clean, not cracked or broken, and red in color. Also have a reverse light, which should be clear in color, and I'd inspect that like I did the other lights. Back here I also have mud flaps. I make sure that they were securely mounted to the tractor frame, and I'd make sure, of course, they're not missing and the flaps themselves aren't torn. Coming out to the side of my trailer, I inspect my 3 side marker lights and also 3 reflectors at the bottom. The front and center marker lights and reflectors would be amber in color, the rear would be red, making sure they're not missing, they're not cracked or broken. Then I would inspect the side of the trailer, looking for any cuts, holes, or bulges. I would inspect the frame rail of my trailer, making sure that it's not damaged. There are no missing bolts for my cross members, looking at all the cross members at the bottom, making sure none are cracked, broken, bent, or missing, and looking at the floor of my trailer to make sure there are no holes in my floor. Then I would take a look at the landing gear, making sure that it's mounted securely to the bottom of my trailer. All the cross brackets are secure, no bolts are missing. The landing gear is fully raised, and the crank handle, which is on the other side, I would check to make sure that it is secure. Take a walk back to the rear of the trailer. Looking back here, I can see that I do have a sliding tandem sliding axle trailer, and I can see that the release handle and the pins are both in the lock position. Looking at the trailer axle, the suspension, I'd inspect the front and rear spring mounts, leaf springs, U-bolts, and torsion bar, the same as I did on the drive axle. For the brake system, air hose, brake chamber, push rod, slack adjuster, brake shoes, and drum. Again, I'd inspect those as I did on the drive axle. For the tires and wheels, I'd inspect the tires, the rims, valve stems, and lug nuts, spacer, the same as I did on the drive axle. Here I have a hub wall seal again, and I'd inspect that, same as I did on the steering axle. Okay, I do have the door tie back here. I'd make sure that is present and, of course, secure to the side of my trailer. Coming back to the rear, starting at the top, I would check my doors, all the hinges are present, not are cracked or broken. The door latches themselves are secured to the doors, and make sure the doors open and close properly. Also, checking to make sure that both doors have a door tie, which is secure, present. Okay, back at the lights, again I have tail lights, brake lights, turn signals, and four-way flashers, and I would inspect those lights the same as I did on the rear of the tractor. Mud flaps, I would inspect the mud flaps the same as I did at the rear of the tractor. I would inspect the right side of my vehicle the same as I did on the left side of the vehicle. This time we're going to perform an in-cab inspection. Let me lower the hood. I'm going to climb inside the tractor, 3-point grasp, get inside the tractor. First thing I want to inspect would be the seatbelt, making sure that it's securely mounted to the seat and also to the floor. Checking the seatbelt to make sure it's not frayed, there are no cuts, and also making sure that the seatbelt latches securely. Okay. Next, I'll take a look at my emergency equipment. I should have a 10 BC fully charged fire extinguisher, and it should be also securely mounted. I would also inspect for 3 reflective triangles and also for spare fuses. Looking at the gear shifter, it is in neutral and it is secured to the transmission. This time I'll take out the key and we're going to depress the clutch and start the engine. First thing I'll check is the oil pressure, which should rise within 3 to 5 seconds. It has. Next, I'll inspect the city horn, make sure it works. The steering wheel should have no more than 2 inches of play in the steering wheel. Checking the indicator lights on the dash. My left turn signal indicator light works. The right indicator light works. The 4-way indicators also work. And I'll turn on the headlights, check my high beam indicator light, and the high beam indicator light also works. Going back to my dash and the gauges, my air pressure should rise to governor cutout pressure, which is between 100 and 125 psi. My water temperature should rise to 160 to 190. The fuel gauge is reading what I saw in the tank earlier, and the voltmeter is in the green between 12 and 14 volts. And coming over to my parking brake valves, I would make sure that the parking brake valves are applied and that they are secure to the dash and that there are no leaks coming from the valves. Next, I would inspect my windshield wipers, making sure that both wipers are working, and also check for washer flow. I have washer flow. Then I'll come over to my heater and defroster, turning the fan on. Right now it's on defrost. Check for my defroster. Put it to heat. Check for heat. Then I would take a look at my windshield, making sure it's clean on the inside. It has its rubber seal, so there would be no leaks coming inside the cab. And then I would take a look at the left and the right mirrors to make sure that they are in proper adjustment form. Okay. At this time, I'm ready to perform the air brake test. My air pressure is built to the governor cutout pressure. I'm now going to place the transmission in the lowest forward gear. I will turn the engine off, turn my key back on, place those feet on the floor. I'm going to release my parking brakes, apply full pressure down on the service brake pedal, and wait for my air pressure to settle. Okay, my air pressure is settled. I will now perform an air leakage test. The truck should not lose 4 pounds of pressure in 1 minute, starting now. Minute is up. The truck did not lose 4 pounds of air pressure. My next test will be for my low air warning signal. I will fan the brakes down to 60 psi, in which I should get a light and the buzzer. Okay, I'm at 60 psi and I do have a low air warning light and the buzzer. At this time I will continue fanning the brakes, and between 40 and 20 psi I should get spring brake activation. Both my parking brake valves should pop out. Okay. This concludes my air brake test. At this time, I will turn the key off, turn on my trailer lights, my headlights, and the left turn signal, and we will conduct a walk-around light check. Starting at the front, my clearance lights on the trailer are working, the ID clearance lights on top of the tractor are working, headlights are working, and the left turn signal is working. Walking down the left side. Let's set all of my side marker lights, make sure that they are all working. Back at the tractor, my left turn signal and tail light will be working. And at the rear of the trailer, my left turn signal and tail light will work. Now we'll come up to the front. I'm going to turn on the high beams and also the right turn signal. Up at the front, you see the high beams are working. Right turn signal is working. Side marker lights on the right side are working. Right turn signal and tail light is working on the tractor. And the right turn signal and tail light is rear of the trailer. At this time, I'm going to go up and put on the four-way flashers. Front, you see the four-way flashers are working. Checking at the back of the tractor. The rear, see that the four-way flashers are working. And the four-way flashers are working. Now with your assistance, you need to check the brake lights and also the reverse light if you would give me a thumbs up. Cancel all of my lights. I have the key. It's in my pocket. This concludes my pre-trip inspection.